How deep does your forgiveness go? Could you tell the young man who raped and murdered your daughter, I love you and I forgive you? Today, you'll meet a man of staggering compassion and love who believes forgiveness should never come without accountability. Dr. Buck Blodgett has shared the story of Jessie, his daughter, with millions of people because he refuses to let her light fade. He's living proof that the hardest love is the one that sets you free. So, Buck, I thought about how do I want to introduce you and Jessie? And I thought the most important thing is lead with Jessie. Would you tell us what Jessie was like while she was on the planet?
Oh my gosh, where do I even start? It depends when. She was okay from moment one. We had her at home, and we didn't have a doctor. We just had a midwife, and that little purple head came out, and her eyes were open, and she was looking right at me. And I'd never been through a birth before. I never witnessed a live birth before, and I was not prepared for her to be so present already. Like babies or newborns I was used to seeing, I think had all been born in the hospital and maybe had been had some drugs in their system maybe, and they weren't super alert. Jessie was just alert from the first second before she even came completely out. She, as a little girl, she was curious. She was smart. She asked a million questions, and none of the answers were ever good enough, or they led to more questions. And she always wanted to know why, and then she always wanted to know how. As a middle schooler, her social conscience blossomed, and it started with PETA in sixth grade. She found PETA online, or they found her, and she just became ballistic about the ethical treatment of animals, just fierce. And it was beautiful to watch. It was a little tough to live with sometimes because she was so strong in her beliefs. But she was outraged at a young age by anything that wasn't fair, that wasn't right, that was mean to people or animals, anything that didn't take care of the planet in a good way. And that morphed into vegetarianism. And that was the worst grocery shopping year of Joy's life. And she just knew she dreaded coming home with groceries because she knew she was going to have to deal with Jessie. And then that became Buddhism for a short time because of their uh, um, daily practice because of their reverence for every living thing,
For
and the
life,
daily
yes.
practice of breathing in the suffering of the world and then exhaling love back out into the world. And she lived that way. And ironically, she landed on her last big cause in life about age 16. And it was what she called male on female violence. And she told me all about it. And I listened and I heard, and we walked around the block with the dog every day and had those conversations. But it wasn't real for me until it happened to her.
So your daughter sounds like your teacher.
Yes, it almost feels like something deep inside her knew she had a short time here and she had to pack a lot in and take it all in and live it all. And that's how she lived.
She feels, my sense from what I've seen of the documentaries that you've been on, from what you've shared, that she's a very old soul, like an old soul from the beginning. She came out awake.
You're not the first person to say that. I've heard that enough times where I'm calling her that now. I didn't used to when she was alive, but I think that may be true.
Okay, so Buck, we now know who Jessie was, the heart of who she is. Can you tell us what happened to Jessie?
Sure. In There's a long version and a short version. So you tell me how much detail you want. And I also want to give a trigger warning for our listeners. Some might be triggered by what they're about to hear. What happened? It's pretty dark. It's pretty disturbing. But her story is also full of light, hope, and resilience, and strength, and love, and forgiveness, which is why I'm here to tell that part of the story. What happened was Dan, her friend in high school, who sat right next to her for 4 years, first and second chair violins in the orchestra. They were in all the plays together, all the musicals together, state solo ensemble competitions, forensics meets. They knew each other well. They weren't best friends, but they were close enough. They even dated freshman year of high school 4 years earlier. And by the way, for the record, this wasn't the classic breakup violence. Dan broke up with Jessie and didn't want anything to do with her for a while till she won him back over as a friend. So it wasn't that. But Dan, on a Monday morning, waited for me to go to work, waited for Joy to go to work, and then let himself in. He was welcome in her home. He was just over the week before, singing and writing songs in Jessie's music room. He was welcome in her home. So he came in and surprised Jessie in her sleep on that Monday morning. First morning all summer, she's sleeping in. She was pooped because she was the fiddler and the fiddler on the roof. And they just had opening weekend and the late night cast party. And Dan knew all of this. So he surprised her in her sleep, and he did the unthinkable. He attacked Jessie. He hog-tied Jess. He stuffed a gag ball in her mouth, tape around her face and head to hold the gag ball. And he raped Jessie. And when he was finished, he reached for his backpack, which the DA called his murder kit. And he pulled out a rope and put the rope around Jessie's neck and pulled, I imagine, as hard as he could. 210-pound young man, 110-pound young woman, surprised in her sleep. And he held it not only all the way until Jessie lost consciousness, but for at least 45 seconds after Jessie lost consciousness. Because he also watched a snuff film before he came over to our house that morning. And I don't know if your viewers know what a snuff film is. I hope they don't, and I hope they refuse to watch, especially us guys. But it's a genre of film, mostly on the dark web, that shows usually women being sexually assaulted and killed by men. And there's enough people who like to watch this that it's called a genre. Anyway, he watched one before he came to our house that morning. The DA called it his instructional video. And he came over and he acted it out. And he learned from that film that that's what it takes to stop the heart, to hold pressure after she's lost consciousness for all that time. And he watched the life and the light drain out of Jessie's eyes.
That is so, as a parent, I just want to acknowledge your strength and just want to say thank you for your sheer transparency and talking about topics that many would just put their head in the sand and not bring it up.
As a parent, I half don't want to talk about it because I don't want to injure other humans. Just hearing such a story, I think, can be harmful to us. But I also believe that it's critically important that we talk about it, that we have to bring light to the darkness. We have to, or else the darkness owns us.
The darkness
But if
owns
we
us.
do, yeah, it does. And whatever we can't face owns us. But whatever we can be present with for as long as it takes, no matter what it is, even something as nasty and hard and painful as this horrific thing, if I stay present with it long enough, it loses its power over me. And Dan did the damage he could do that day, but I will never. He doesn't get to do anymore. I won't give him the power, my power to be peaceful and free, and he doesn't get to injure that. And I do this because I want everybody to know they have a choice when they have a deep pain, and that it can, pain it's terrible and it hurts, but it's a doorway to, it's an access point to our freedom and our peace that a freedom and a peace I didn't know existed till I had such a pain.
100%. And what you've just shared, presence is power and pity is poison. That's what I learned that when my immune system attacked my muscles and people wanted to get, when death comes, presence is power. And that's what I see in you. I see you being present in the moment. I, actually would love to share with you the question that this actually is a good lead up to what my daughter asked, my 12-year-old daughter asked of you when I had told her about this journey and this experience on how you are finding purpose in your pain. So, she asked, what was your first thought when you heard that Jessie was murdered? And when you replay that moment now, I believe it's a decade later, is that correct?
12 years now.
12
Yes.
years. 12 years later, this experience, how do you think of the moment? So, what was the moment? What was moving through your mind in the very moment that you found out? And now, when you just restated it, and you've shared that many times in documentaries, when you feel it now, how is it different? Has it changed?
What an incredible question from a 12-year-old. My gosh, you talk about
She's a
presence. Your daughter is very present. Um, so I never heard that my daughter was murdered. What happened was I got a phone call. It was, I now have labeled it. It's the phone call that every parent fears. And it came from Joy. And it came from Joy about 10 minutes after she found Jessie,
Joy's her
after
mother.
she Joy's my wife, Jessie's mom, and she's a chiropractor like me at the time. She came home for lunch and she found Jessie upstairs when Jessie wasn't responding. And Jessie had a 6-year-old student and her dad walking up our driveway for their piano lesson. And so Joy went upstairs and couldn't understand why Jess wasn't responding. And she touched her and Jess was cold and she rolled her over and she was blue. And there's a phone on the nightstand next to Jessie's bed. Joy called 911 at the same time she's starting CPR. And it took first responders just a few minutes to come. And as soon as they did, they took over for her. And the first thing Joy did was call me. And I was processing and I wasn't getting all the information. Like Joy was also amazingly present and clear. She wasn't hysterical, but it might have sounded like that. She was incredibly emotional, but also very present and responding. Anyway, she told me, it's Jessie, it's Jessie, it's Jessie. And I said, what, honey? And she said, I came home and I came upstairs and I found her and she's not responding. Paramedics are here and they're working on her right now. And I said, is she responding to them? And Joy trailed off. She was starting to not be able to talk, overcome by emotion. But I thought she said no. I said, honey, is she? And then I didn't want to say the word dead. So I said, gone. And then Joy broke down emotionally. And we have two different memories of this. And my memory is she didn't talk anymore. And hers is she just told me straight out, no. But I don't think I heard a no. Maybe I just couldn't hear a no at the time. So I hung up, grabbed my car keys, flew out of the clinic. It's about a half an hour drive home. And hearing that Jessie was murdered was an unfolding process for me over several days because the police were just, her room was a crime scene when I got home. She was a crime scene and I couldn't see her. I couldn't touch her. A million, to answer your daughter's questions, there wasn't one thought that went through my head. There was a million thoughts that were going through my head. Presence is weird that way. I felt like I remembered this old saying I heard about the samurai. Here's the bird in the middle of battle. Not that I'm a samurai. Anybody who knows me would,
Oh, you're
I'm
energetically a
5.
samurai, let me tell you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Not physically, energetically, maybe.
We'll go there.
Anyway,
Yes.
yeah, it was just an incredible heightened awareness of everything, every sound, every sight, everything. that drive home was a strange experience. I could see, I vividly remember a songbird chasing a big hawk across the bright blue sky with puffy white clouds in the background and a diesel engine and the diesel smell of the truck in front of me as I was driving home, talking to a God that I didn't believe in. I identified as an atheist at the time, and yet I was praying the whole way. I wouldn't call it praying. I would actually call it a conversation. And the larger scene too, just it was like this incredible trauma and shock and grief beyond anything I'll ever experience in my life. And it's kind of juxtaposed against this like beautiful summer day, sunny summer day in Wisconsin. Um, I don't know what to make of it all. Maybe I'll just let it be.
Wow. When you were driving home, you didn't know she had been murdered yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. Even when I got home, that whole day, we didn't know, but we started with between detective interviews. Joy was sharing, we were talking, and she did mention a mark that she saw across Jessie's neck. And of course, anybody who works in this field knows that that's not very visible in the beginning, but the next day and 2 days later, it becomes extremely visible. And that's what happened. So we didn't know in the beginning.
A few days later, you find out that she was actually violently murdered.
It was this happened. She was murdered on a Monday morning, and Thursday morning, we went to the police station. That's when we found out who it was. And we had put a lot of pieces together by then. And I guess at that point, we knew that she'd been strangled to death, and it was Dan who did it.
When you found out she didn't just die, she was violently murdered, take me to that moment where you have this realization where I would say a huge majority of fathers might want to get a pistol and find out where this person is and go and kill them. You took a different route. Talk to me about the moment you hear, and maybe you had that feeling, because I'd like to understand how anger and rage came, how that shows up in your life, because that's a normal response. And curious how the love and the kindness and forgiveness intertwined.
Yes. I'll do my best. It was much more of a process and an unfolding than over time, over days, than it was a moment. It wasn't like one of the police officers ever came to us and said, "I've got bad news for you. Your daughter's been violently murdered." This was unfolding over time. The police didn't know in the beginning. A key time in maybe a key moment was Thursday morning. Joy and I are sitting in the police station with Detective Thickens, who just yesterday, by the way, 12 years later, became the Hartford PD police chief.
Oh,
Well deserved.
congratulations. Mm.
Uh, I kind of love Rich. Like we never see each other, we don't hang out, but him and Chief Groves, the chief at the time, I feel like they're family for the way they handled me and our family in Jesse's case. Anyway, we're in his office, Joy and I. Um, it's the third morning after. It was the first morning he didn't come to our house to ask follow up questions. So I woke up in the morning and I couldn't take the house. We've all heard deafening silence. This was deafening emptiness on steroids. I couldn't take it. And I asked Joy, can we get out of here? Can we go to the police station? And since he didn't come this morning and just check in on the investigation. So we did. He invites us right into his office, which is amazing if you know the backstories, because as we sit there for 2 hours, events are unfolding in Woodlawn Park where they're finding all the physical and DNA evidence, and he's managing it while he's like on and off his radio on his phone while he's sitting there fully present with us. But about 2 hours in, he gets to a place where he excuses himself. I think he had to take another phone call, and he said, "I'll be right back," and he leaves. And in his office, his boss had just sat down in the back a few minutes earlier. He'd just come in and sat down with us. And we didn't even turn around and look at him. But I did when Thickens left. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know he was Thickens' boss. He actually was the police chief for the last 12 years after Groves
Wow.
retired. Chief Scott
Wow.
McFarland, quite a team. Anyway, I turned to him in this awkward silence, me and him and Joy just sitting in Thicken's office. And I said, that's the third day in a row he's led with a question about Dan. What's up with that? And he goes on to tell me Dan's been arrested, and he starts to lay out some of the evidence they have. And when I heard the evidence, I knew it was Dan. And my reaction in that moment was not, give me 5 minutes with baseball bat in the woods with this kid. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rage. It was genuine concern for Dan. And Joy had the exact same reaction. And the reason for that was a blessing. And I don't take any credit for it. I believe this was one of a series of incredible blessings for my life. And I know it sounds nuts for the dad of a murdered girl to say such a thing. But Jessie's murder was not only a horrible tragedy, it was also it was also a blessing in ways, in some profound ways. And let me see if I can describe those at all. So the first blessing was, no hate, no anger, no rage, no hate, no judgment even. It was just concern. Now, this is a kid who was at our house the day after he killed Jessie. Before anybody knew it was him, he spent half the day with us in our living room, sharing hugs and tears and stories and memories and loving on each other. What happened in my house from the Monday of the murder to the Saturday of the funeral was people came over and filled up our house every day. And we weren't super social. I've always been kind of a taskmaster and semi-workaholic, and this changed me forever because our house just filled up and we just loved each other like I'd never seen before. Now, Jennifer, I'm from a family that there's no violence in it. There's a lot of love in it. I've always seen the good in people. Never saw anything like this. Never saw an outpouring like this. It was, people, we didn't cook for a month. Food just kept coming. I don't even know who supplied us with all the food. People did our lawn. People did our laundry. 1,000 cards and letters came in the mail. It's just this over-the-top outpouring of love, not only from my family and friends and Joy's, not only from our greater community and all kinds of people we didn't even know from Hartford, but like way beyond Hartford even. A lady in New Jersey who I don't know to this day mailed us a prayer shawl. Never heard of one of those. She said a prayer for me and my family on every stitch. We found out it was Dan simultaneously while this was happening. The darkness and the light, the shock and the grief and the pain and the incredible outpouring of love. So inside of all that, I did not, when we found it was Dan, it was more like, oh my God, what happened with Dan? What happened in his brain and his heart, that he's a straight A student. He's never been in any trouble. What happened? So it was concern. And the second blessing was that after about 2 weeks of acting like that, instead of acting hateful and trashing him and his family, we were saying good things about his family. Because they didn't do this, he did. And they were seemingly great parents. They raised a great daughter who's only like a year older than him. So about 2 weeks into this, I started to notice a light bulb went on in the back of my brain. I realized the way people were reacting to me and my reaction, which wasn't full of hate and anger, but was, talking about love, peace, and honoring each other, how every second is a gift and we're all precious. And I just couldn't help myself. That was what was happening for me. And then the second light bulb went on right after that. And that was, dude, you got a new job in life. You are to forgive. You're to practice it intentionally. And I've been giving it to you for 2 weeks now. Now you need to take ownership of it, work at it, learn about it, teach it, model it, practice it, and be an example of it for everyone who will listen.
so profound. What would you say to a parent who is harboring a bunch of rage and anger because something similar happened to their child? Maybe they're an atheist, maybe they're religious. I don't know if that matters. But what do you say to those people who are holding that and may want to do that?
I wouldn't say anything to them. I would just sit with them if they let me. And, I would listen first. One of my favorite scriptures is everyone should be quick to listen, slow to
Yes,
speak,
yes,
and
yes.
slow to anger.
Mm.
And I would try to do that because people don't want advice. I don't. I didn't. I didn't want anybody to try to make me feel better. Uh, Don't tell me I should feel better. My daughter's dead.
Right.
I didn't want anybody trying to encourage us, lift us up. The holidays were really bad for the first couple of years because we didn't want to be a dark rain cloud on anybody else's holidays, but we also didn't want to be cheered up. We just wanted to kind of use the holiday to go in our own space and just leave us alone and let us grieve through this thing. So I wouldn't say anything to anybody until they said something first. And then I would ask my maker to help me say the things that gave them some comfort and peace, maybe nudge them towards him if they're open to that and not if they're not. Um, and I would hopefully all my words would just be words of love in whatever form and expression was needed.
You have the presence of a samurai.
Thank you. I received that.
Mm.
This isn't a deflection. This is a call. I think every one of us has incredible heart, strength, resilience, wisdom, but most of us aren't very in touch with it
That's right.
and don't live by it. And I don't think I'm any different than anybody else. And I find myself talking like I have this special connection to God. And I believe I do, but I believe everybody does.
What I've noticed, no matter what religion or atheist or agnostic, there is something about those who've had profoundly deep suffering when fully present with that pain, have the ability to transmute that into beautiful presence, joy, and wisdom. And that is something I see in you. I want to ask you, I do want to ask my daughter's second question of Jessie, but something moved me. I asked multiple people questions. Ask them, could you give me a question from your lived experience? I don't believe like every person I've interviewed for this podcast came organically. You have shown up, and when I looked back at the podcast guests that I've interviewed, there's some pain included rape, murder, death of a child. And that's not a coincidence. And as the host, I only have my lived experience with trauma and death. And some of that is not what you've experienced. So I thought, what better than to ask the previous guests to ask questions to you? Would you be okay if I shared some of their questions?
I would beyond okay. I'd welcome it. I love it. I think it's a fabulous idea. I've been been interviewed on TV and radio and podcasts so many times, and nobody's ever done that before. And what if we all were just a little more curious and interested in
Yes.
other people's questions?
Here's some more questions. So I actually want to lead with someone I hope to have on this pod. And don't waste your pain. I'm going to lead with him because I think you would get him. He is a client and a friend of mine. He's been in prison. He's a life sentence. He's been there, I believe, 23 years now. He has had his own spiritual awakening in prison. He has friends who murdered people. And we actually had a really profound dialogue because I told him about this experience after you said it was okay. I asked you if I could ask all of these people. I just want to let everyone know. Buck said, go for it. And I wanted to share something that he shared, which is very akin to what you were saying. And he said he didn't have a question, but he wanted to share something from a person in prison's point of view, who's really done the work. His practices is more in Hinduism and Buddhism, in those philosophies. And what I love about all the different religions, I see there's so many similarities, just like how us humans are more alike than we are different. So I'll read this to you. I recently read a spiritual teaching in the Hindu traditions that says everything happens for the best. And it may come across as uncaring and callous, which is kind of similar to what you were saying, but that is not what it's intended in the teaching. I have seen how prison has led people to have an awakening. In a sense, it's similar to someone who has suffered great loss. The suffering is so extreme, and there is no external thing that can help you. He shared about a woman he read about who experienced the extremely painful death of her husband. And the woman said she could no longer live in a superficial life. She expressed that many people dwell on the surface. I heard some of that in your own words, on the surface level. And when you experience something that shakes you to the core, you simply can't go back. He then said that he often contemplates these teachings and that all experiences provide an opportunity to evolve and gain wisdom, especially the most painful, because intense suffering forces us to turn within because there are no external solutions to our pain. I saw so many similarities in what you just said. And then he said, when one moves past this should not have happened mindset and the realm of emotional turmoil, then one discovers the stillness in the depth of our being. And here lies the peace that can never be grasped by the conceptual mind. And the understanding of our true essence can never suffer and die. And he wanted to share that with you.
One thing that struck me was, first of all, just that he's in prison. I don't know if you know or how much you know, but my favorite part of our Love is Greater Than Hate project, Jessie's Legacy, is our prison program. It's just, if you had told me 12 years ago, Jennifer, that I would voluntarily walk into prison
Yes.
over and over and over and over,
Yes.
just right there, I would have thought you're crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
that it would become the most meaningful thing I've ever done. Like, I've been a chiropractor for almost 30 years. I just retired 2.5 years ago. People would sometimes barely walk into the clinic and then they'd walk out. That's pretty rewarding, pretty fulfilling. People having migraine headaches, helping them feel better, pretty fulfilling. Teaching them how to, eat and move and think in healthier ways. Very, very rewarding, fulfilling. Nothing compared to going into prison. And it's kind of like my church too. But I attended Cedar Springs for 12 years up in Wisconsin until we moved down here to Florida. And it has a high percentage of recovering people. And I just love them. And I love that. There's something special about people who've seen the darkness, who've really been there.
I told him where you were from, and he goes, "Oh, they don't have the death penalty there." He knew. He said they don't have the death penalty so that they have the time and space to evolve.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah. I'm against the death penalty for whatever that's worth for that exact reason. And actually, not for that reason. The real reason is I just don't believe any of us have the authority or the right, or, I mean, it's a human life. I know so many murderers in our prison forgiveness class now who they are so not the person at age 45 that they were at 17 when they grew up in the neighborhood they grew up in, and it was survival.
Yes, that's exactly what he says, because he had 3 strikes you're out. He didn't murder anyone. He actually wanted to have the police kill him, so he robbed and hoped that they would kill him, but that failed. He got life in prison, and he said it's one of the biggest gifts of his life because he became who he is now, and he guides his son from afar. But I also want to just share with you because You are so connected to those in prison. I know whose question is coming next. She represents the piece of rape that all of the three collective, right, who understand the pain. Do you mind if I move to that? Because we'll continue. Because
Please.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you why we're moving to her. So I'm going to lead with what she said, and then I'm going to give you the question. Okay. She said, so I'll just give you a backstory on her. She came from a Vietnamese family. They were escaping and they moved to Norway and for peace and safety. And she was raped by a pedophile at 12. She then, like you, allowed that pain to turn into purpose. At 15, she went to court. She put that man in jail. And then she became a judge. And she listened. She learned the power of someone hearing your voice when she was 15 and stood up for herself. She stated this, and then I'll give you her question. Because my experience is that trauma and pain comes with a need to find even more love and more space for oneself in order to hold enough space not to hate.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you say so much. And if I don't, I'm going to forget too many pearls of wisdom and responses. So I just had Booker T. Washington said almost what this lady is saying also. He said, I will allow no man to degrade my soul by making me hate him.
Ooh, ooh, yes. I love having you as a guest. Can you just keep coming back?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. What we need today is more love, more hope, and people being more conscious and connected to themselves. Here's where I'm feeling her connecting with Jessie. I think, and you, of course, I think violence against women is like polluting the earth. We, the female side, nurture life, and harming us or children, boys and girls alike, are harming our own being. So her question is, where do you find peace and how do you fill up your own cup?
Yeah. My truth, Jennifer, is that peace found me. I didn't go looking for peace. I was in the middle of a trauma. But that's just my experience of it. And I don't know if that's helpful because, yeah, it is helpful. I
Yeah, it
thought
is.
maybe it isn't helpful because it doesn't give anybody something to do that they can find it. But I don't think there is anything to do. I think it's,
It gives hope that peace can find you.
yeah, yeah. And I believe it's like a living, breathing thing. It's this peace that surpasses understanding. Christians call it. I used to call it for a year and a half. I called it the great okayness because
Ooh,
that
I
was
love
my
that.
experience of it. And it's kind of
Okay.
clumsy and awkward. I didn't know what else to call it. It was just this ridiculous, unexplainable, and profound. Not a feeling. It was more than a feeling. It was like a knowing, for lack of a better word. That's not even a good enough word for it. But it was just that everything is okay. In the midst of when it's most certainly not okay.
Most.
Everything was okay. That was my experience. So I feel like peace found me.
Was there a moment where peace found you where can you describe that moment, or was it this kind of overall experience, or was it that moment where it found you?
No one's ever asked me that before. So I don't know how my answer isn't well thought out, but here's what it is.
Great. I
I
love it.
there wasn't a moment when it found me. It was always there. But what happened was I got rocked out of my 53-year habitual way of being by a trauma and a tragedy so big. It was like a bomb going off, and it that just changed me. It just you were talking earlier about superficial versus deep. Like I can't stand going to parties anymore because I don't want to
No, I
talk
know.
about the weather and how much
No.
beer we can drink and the Packers. As much as I love the Green Bay Packers, I just couldn't care less. I don't care about over 95% of the things I used to care about before we lost Jessie. Having the best looking lawn in the neighborhood, and how much money everybody's making. It just doesn't matter. It just so It's all that matters is, here's what I learned when Jess was just gone one moment, one day, that every second is precious and sacred and it's a gift.
That's right.
And none of us are promised tomorrow.
That's right.
None of us are promised the next second in this world, in this life. And every person is precious and sacred, and they're a gift too, even when it doesn't feel like it.
100%. Death has an extremely powerful way of forcing you into the present, whether you like it or not. And those who choose presence, they're not pushing it away. They're really like, they are in the pain. I hear that you felt your pain. You felt the pain. In fact, can you take me to the moment where you're lying in Jessie's bed and you're holding your breath? I saw that on your HBO, in the HBO documentary, Murder Among or Killer Among Friends.
Yeah,
What was going through your mind as you're in this moment of pain?
sure. First of all, I still feel that pain. One of my patients said the week I came back that she had lost a soulmate 17 years earlier. And I said, CG, I guess eventually it gets better. I guess eventually the pain goes away. And I was looking for a little comfort, I guess. And she said, no, it never goes away. Wow. And she was right. 12 years later, I'll tell you she's right. It's not going away in this lifetime. In that moment, and the background for that moment is that how I explain it now is I believe Jessie whispered to me, Dad, feel it all, experience it uh, all of it. The good and the bad, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, all of it. And and also driving me to go up to her bed and lay down was just the combination of the wondering what she went through, and I don't wrestle with guilt at all, but
Beautiful.
there might have been a little bit where, I wasn't. What's the number one job of a dad? It's to protect his daughter, and I wasn't there when she most needed her dad,
Yeah.
and so maybe there was a little part of me that thought, I needed to, just out of loyalty to her, to feel or experience as best I could what she went through. But I wanted to experience as best I could what she went through. So I went and laid on her bed and more than once and held my breath for as long as I could. And then when you have that reflex to gasp, I suppressed that as hard and as long as I could to just try to, understand what Jessie went through in her last moments. Of course, I don't believe I could ever get close to understanding because there was so much more to it. You know, Dan's attack, at the trial, we learned a lot of facts, and one of them was from the coroner who said this is a coroner who taught forensic science at Harvard. And I don't know how we got her for our trial, but we did. And she said that she had never seen injuries that severe to the anterior strap muscles. Um, the three layers of muscles were hemorrhaged right down to the spine. So there's no way I could lay in her bed and understand what she went through, but I needed to try.
And when you tried and when you sat with the pain, what happened? What happened afterwards?
Mm, just overwhelming grief and sadness.
I believe some of the most painful moments are the ungrieved grief. And ungrieved grief can look like the turmoil we see around the world. We can see it rage, right? Depression. It doesn't have to be connected to a murder. It can be multiple types of ungrieved grief. What I hear you saying is, I went to experience her pain so I could truly feel the grief.
Yeah, something in me just Joy and I said a couple brilliant things to each other on the couch between detective interviews that Monday of the murder. The first was she said to me, honey, we have to stick together. Marriages break up over stuff like this. I don't know how she intuitively knew that, but I found out a few months later 79% of marriages don't survive the death of a child, even if there's more than one child in the family. And then I said to her a little later on, we cannot get bitter about this. I don't know where that came from, but I intuitively knew that that would eat me alive if I went down that road and got bitter and resentful and hateful and full of anger and rage. Um, did I answer your question? I
You
forget where
did.
we
You
were in the
did.
question.
Well, you answered the big question. I'm now going to call in one of our other guests. I sat with her and Carson, who is 13 years old, days before he died. He died of cancer. So she understands the loss of a child. Um, I remembered her talking about a communal grief that happened right after he died. And when I was watching the documentary, um, the HBO one, I remember you were talking, I think it was to Ian, one of her best friends at the table. And you mentioned about how there was all the forensic crew, the police, there was all this energy in the house. It was disruptive. But it was alive. There was a lot of energy. And then they left. And there was that deafening silence. And then who showed up at the deafening silence? Who ended up knocking on your door? And how did you feel when that
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. That was I was staring out the picture window watching our whole long driveway and our whole neighborhood just empty out in 5 minutes of fire trucks and ambulances and crime scene unit vehicle and all the Hartford PDs, Washington County Sheriffs, the squad cars, and the coroner was the last vehicle to leave with Jessie. It was so surreal. I'm just looking out that window and um,
Ooh, let me pause you. Let me pause you. When her body leaves the house, how are you feeling in that very moment? You will no longer see her in your house.
yeah, I don't think I can possibly describe that adequately. I don't think there's words for that. I'll tell you this: I waited all day to see her and touch her and tell her um, I'm sorry for not being there when she needed her dad, and tell her that I'd never stop loving her. And all of a sudden, that moment came and went in the snap of fingers. It's like the investigation was over. They brought her down on a gurney. They bring her through our little dining room. There's 6 guys carrying her and me, and they said, "Okay, now you can see her." And she's strapped and wrapped up, and just the bed sheets were down over her face so that I could see her face and her fixed eyes and her blueness. Yeah, and she's gone. I hope people can feel my feeling because I don't know how to tell anybody
We're here.
what it feels
We're here
like.
with you. We're
It's
here with you.
yeah, it's too much for words. Empty like an emptiness. I don't know. Empty like a Twilight Zone episode where I'm in black space and there's nothing else. No land, no sea, no air, no nothing. Just me and blackness, like that kind of empty, lonely, lonely emptiness. Just devastating loss. That's how it felt.
Yes. In this moment, you're feeling this, and then what happens? Who shows up? Who comes knocking on those doors?
Yeah, it was. I know it got dark while I was staring out that picture window because when I saw them, it was dark. So I don't know, I have no idea how long that was, but it was a long time. But I started to see movement past the apple trees, which were down by the road across our big yard down the hill. And I'm like, what's that? And and I started to realize it was Jessie's friends who were coming.
That's right.
And, and I'll say this, my family didn't come that day. Most of them were out of state, so it took them a couple days. But even the ones who were local, and I'm not criticizing, I'm saying
Right.
nobody knew what to do. And I think people thought we need our space that first day. And but Jesse's friends, they didn't know what the right thing or the wrong thing to do was. They just they just started spontaneously assembling down at the road at our house, and then they started walking up the driveway together. And next thing I knew, our house was full of Jesse's friends, and
Mm.
I think they started the process of my healing that night, though I didn't realize it, and I hope I started theirs too.
What I love seeing in multiple stories of trauma is where the earth angels show up. I hear they showed up in the courtroom as powerful women. I hear they showed up as the children who didn't have to wonder, is this right or wrong? You go instinctual. If all of us could stay in the childlike mind of curiosity and presence, children are quite present, how much would the world be healed?
Mm. Which begs another question. If What if we practice showing up for each other like that? Like this was they just loved Jessie. They had to show up. There was nothing else to do, nothing else they were thinking about, caring about, wanted to do, or would have done. They just all started to show up. And then we showed up for each other every day all week long until the trial. And to this day, 12 years later, what if we practiced showing up for each other like that every day? And why don't we? What's more important?
And isn't it beautiful that you are modeling that? You're modeling that for so many people. Jessie modeled that in her life and how that's showing up. I want to bring Carrie again, who understands losing a child. Um, when we had our dialogue, she talked about saying Carson's name and having worked with for a decade of people who've lost their children, how important it is to say their name, continue to bring them into the life. And I get the sense that her friends continuously bring her into their life now. You, in your work, your movement, your mission, she's showing up. All right, are you ready for Carrie's questions? She's got some good
Yeah,
ones.
wait.
So here we go. She said, here are a few we thought of after talking with my kids. She has many kids from multiple different ages. I believe a couple in their 20s, teens, and even young. I think she's 9. And they all heard about Jessie. I want you to know how many people have heard about Jessie. Okay. What did the forgiveness process look like for you? You've already touched on a lot of this. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this process? And I'm going to add the second question because I think it will help you because we've talked a lot about that. Was it something you had to choose daily, and then forgiveness came, or was it something you decided in a single moment?
It's a lot of great questions. The forgiveness process is ongoing for me. It's not something I look at like a past tense, like something I did. It's something I will live into until I'm not living anymore in this form and place. Um, so it's still, I haven't gotten to the end of it yet. Like I haven't mastered it. There's always another level, another
Mhm.
insight, the next thing to bring into the world and to bring into me. Um, so, but, the answer to that question, what was my forgiveness process like, is very different the first year than it is now. The first year, to answer the second part of the question, it was a daily practice. It was a daily choice. Forgiveness is not, I've learned this since, and it's in the class we teach in prisons. Forgiveness is not I forgive you, and then it's over and done. It's not a one time thing. Maybe for the tiny little things, like if I'm driving and somebody cuts in front of me and I get an instant of road rage and I say, I forgive you. And maybe then I can just forget it and let it go. But the big things in life, like Dan and Jessie or the sexual assaults, beatings, traumas, the betrayals, the abandonments, the big things in life, those are, you're likely going to have to forgive that thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I somehow knew that too from the beginning, another blessing, I guess. And I made it at that 2 week mark when I chose forgiveness and I started to own it and say it and do it, instead of it just happening to me like this amazing blessing. I determined for myself I was going to do it every day. So I literally, intentionally, purposefully forgave Dan, either in here or out loud, every day for almost 3 years. And I noticed at one point, because I was doing a lot of public speaking by then and telling people the story, and I realized we're coming up on the 1,000th day. And it dawned on me that I didn't need to anymore because I had practiced it daily so much, so long that I just became it. It just became me and I became it. It was like 2 + 2 = 4. It was like embedded in my brain and spinal cord in my central nervous system. And and then it was time to, okay, now what? What's next? And what's the next level of forgiveness mastery? Which, where it's at now, is teaching the forgiveness process in prisons. I believe it should be taught in schools and prisons and everywhere in corporate environments. Imagine corporate teams working together if people practice forgiveness every day.
Yes. God, I have so many more questions around the forgiveness piece. I'm gonna step back into Carrie's question, but I want to lead with something extraordinarily powerful. And whenever I tell your story to people, most people are floored because very few would do this. I think you probably know what's coming. So you're in the
I don't want to
courtroom.
live in a world where people are floored by someone's forgiveness. Didn't we all learn it in kindergarten?
Didn't
You
we all learn
stand
it?
up, you shake hands and say sorry and dust yourself off. And then next thing I know, Jimmy Lintott, who I got into a tough tussle with in kindergarten, we're best friends. I want to live in a world where forgiveness is normal, not unbelievable.
May that be so. May that be so. Though what you did was samurai energy, and very few people are samurais. So when you were in that courtroom and Dan was there, walk us through what you said to Dan and what you did with his parents.
Well, it was sentencing. Actually, the court process was long. There was a hearing about every 6 to 8 weeks for an hour or so, and then the trial was a week and a half. And moments along the way, we tried to connect with Dan's parents and his side of the family, and that eventually happened, and it was great. And um, I wish it would have happened after the trial. And my door's always open, but I also respect people's boundaries, and um, there hasn't been a reciprocation of my, I just thought it would be cool if we could all sit down, have coffee, and talk about this whole thing. And it would be especially cool if two sides of a murder trial could have a purpose to, for peace and love in our community and the planet. But it's okay. I don't understand their pain and don't pretend to and never could. Anyway, at sentencing, we each had 10 minutes to give our statements, me and Dan. And my statement was like a victim impact type statement where we had a chance to, and there were some ground rules. One of the ground rules is don't condemn, and another was, just share how it's affected you, and which was perfect because that's exactly what I wanted to do. Anyway, in my statement, I told Dan that I forgive you and I love you. And I meant it and I still mean it. Um, and unfortunately, he's been 12 years of him not receiving the forgiveness, which he can't because he's still pretending, he's still living a lie. He's never, despite a mountain of physical evidence and DNA evidence, he's still claims he didn't do it. And and I won't get graphic about the DNA evidence, but if you read the 12-page criminal complaint on our website, I don't know anyone who's ever read it who wasn't certain that Dan did this, but he still won't admit it. So I feel like if God is love, he's also truth. And if you build a gigantic wall between yourself and the truth, you're also building yourself a gigantic wall between yourself and love and God. And that's what he's done. It's like forgiveness is like this ripe apple on a tree waiting to be picked, but he's never picked it. He's never received it. So yeah, I told him I forgave him, told him I loved him, still do. Door's always open. In case some of your our listeners are more reasonable and rational and normal than me, I also want them to know um, I I will never release Dan from accountability for what he did.
Mhm.
I'm not dumb. I'm not a fool. And I hope I never release myself from accountability for everything I ever do or say or think. But forgiveness, accountability, yes. Forgiveness, yes. Punishment, as appropriate, when appropriate, yes. Love, yes. They're not mutually exclusive. So, I hate what Dan did, but that doesn't mean I can't love and forgive. And I believe I'm supposed to, and I believe we're all supposed to. And another Christian saying is that there's no, how does this one go? Something about all sins are the same in the eyes of God.
Mhm.
And, so I've sinned, I'll never murder or rape, but I've been mean to people. I've said things that have hurt Joy. I'll probably do it before I go to bed tonight.
Because you're
Um,
human. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, we
Yes.
all are.
Imagine that.
But we're all worthy of love and forgiveness as well.
And also you did hug his parents, is that correct?
I
Afterwards?
did. I
Yeah,
did.
you hugged his
That
parents.
was at some point earlier I think at the end of the trial, I got up. Skip, Dan's dad, got up. He was a few rows back on Dan's side, and I was a few rows up on Jessie's side, and we just kind of spilled into each other. And I was kind of looking for him, and we didn't say anything. We just gave each other kind of a big man hug, and we didn't need to say anything. I believe I saw and felt a dad who knew what his kid did and wasn't denying it, or he didn't see me as, the bad guy out to get his kid. I think he felt horribly bad for what happened to Jessie, who he knew.
Mm.
And I think he knew Dan did it, but I'm making all that up. He never said that to me.
You didn't share.
It's
Yeah.
just my interpretation.
Yeah. And I also can feel the unmet need, or at least I might be projecting, but I would be similar to you where there's almost like there isn't a closure in that space that you can't force, but there's the being able to come together and have that communication of, my God, I want to know your pain. Here is my pain. This isn't anybody's fault. This is of the parents. I see you and I'm holding your pain. And you have done a lot of holding of pain, no doubt, in this experience. Um, I don't know a lot of people who could look at someone who brutally raped and murdered their child and say, I love you. I could hear, I have seen people say, I forgive you. That's extremely hard. The next level is, I love you. I love you. Because how do you love someone who inflicted so much pain? How do you do that, knowing that was your baby?
Another unexplainable blessing to me that I don't take a lot of credit for. I mean, I do. I have to choose it. I
You
have
have to
to. I
choose
have
it.
to.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I.
The power of
Yeah. I have to.
choice.
Yes. I mean, I
Mhm.
could. I could refuse. I could say, peace, get out of here. Love, get out of here. I'm going to be resentful, angry, and hateful for the rest of my life. But I could fantasize about meeting Dan in the woods with a baseball bat for 5 minutes. But what good would that do anybody? That's only going to hurt me.
Though fantasies can help, right? Like playing something in your mind so you don't do it, which I'm sure many, many, many people do, where you have that moment where you can feel that rage, you can feel that anger. How was anger and rage in your life prior to this? Like, I'm just wondering what in your life prepared you for this?
That's a long story. I've never had a lot of anger or rage, but I get angry. I had a little bit of a temper, mostly just ego based. I'm just basically, Jennifer, I'm kind of a 5'9", 150 pound soaking wet hockey guy from outside Milwaukee who always thought he had something to prove out of deep insecurities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I haven't wrestled with terrible anger from any big trauma in my life ever, until this happened, and I still don't. I've never had to wrestle with terrible anger. I just consider that a blessing. Um, there was a course a whole series of courses I did back in the 1980s about um, personal growth and the human potential movement, and I guess I credit that with insights about living a selfless life and not a selfish life, and maybe that helped prepare me for this. I don't know. I don't think so. It just feels supernatural and spiritual to me. Honestly, it
Yeah.
just feels like it comes from a higher place, and I feel like I'm on a canoe in the Mississippi River, and I'm going
Mm-hmm.
wherever the river's going, and it
Oh,
just happens to
yes.
be a beautiful ride. But I could try to paddle upstream, or I could try to paddle to the shore and get out of it, but just a lot better to go with the flow.
You are water. You are water, Buck. Curious, and if you're comfortable answering this question, you've worked with people in prison, did you ask Dan if he wanted to talk or be seen, or is that something?
Yeah, I did write him a letter in the eighth year. And I did, it was well known in the community and to his family and his pastor, and I'm sure him, that my door was open back in those early years. And I reminded him of that in the letter at the 8 year mark. But again, you can't force transformation, in the same exact way that you can't turn an alcoholic into a sober person. They have to do it. You can give tools, you can give resources, you can give encouragement and support, you can be there with them and for them, but only they can do it. And it's just like that with this. So I won't force it. And also I'll say, for anybody who thinks I'm crazy, um, don't BS me. I'm not going to drive to prison to spend time when you're still pretending if this is for some kind of restorative justice program where you get prison privileges or points or something. But if he genuinely means it, if he has a real something, awakening or change of heart or realization or epiphany, whatever you want to call it, if he comes to Jesus, whatever, however you want to think of it, if that's actually happening, I'd be honored to be part of any human being's transformation, especially one as that starts so ugly and would, go so beautiful. Um, I feel like if my maker wants me to help facilitate that, then who am I to paddle upstream?
I liked your analogy where you were showing there's love and then there's owning what one has done. So there's the bricks between there. And I imagine the love that you keep sending that could it may whittle down the bricks in this lifetime. It may not. And it's just your constant flow of love in all that you do is it emanates from you. I think there's always this hope. I know who I've seen for over 2 years now, very much amazing human. It took him first denial in prison of why am I here? The anger, he had to feel a huge amount of anger. Why didn't they just kill me? Why am I stuck in this prison? Right. So he had to go through the rage, the anger, all the things before the opening. Did you notice that with the people you've worked with in prison that?
Yes, yeah, you have to hit bottom. I did. People in my church too that I love so much that are so humble and kind and peaceful because they hit bottom, and now they're more grateful than they've ever been before, and they have more. If let me say it this way, how could I have a deep compassion for somebody who's had a tremendous trauma in their life if I haven't? How could I
100%.
be there for somebody who's lost a child
That's
if
right.
I didn't?
That's right.
So, these terrible, terrible things that happen to us in this lifetime, for me, live now, just Buck's opinion for whatever it's worth. They just live like, um, if eternity is real, and I'm just going to say that Jessie opened the eyes of this atheist. She made me there. We had about 2 dozen. I had about 2 dozen increasingly ridiculous things that happened to me in the year after her murder. That and I'm a scientist at heart. I don't say things like this lightly. I know the human mind is really tricky, and I know people can believe anything and can do anything. Um, the unjustifiable things we do that we justify because of our beliefs. But anyway, she made it clear that her body's dead and gone, but she is not. And if that's so, for me, that's just real now. It's not a belief. It's anything. It's just she showed me, and I'd be an idiot. I wouldn't be a scientist if I ignored all the repetitive evidence, the coincidences, the timing, and the fortunate this and that, just one after another that were a clear answer to this desperate conversation I had at 3 a.m. at the American with somebody who I now call God in the middle of the night when the whole world was sleeping. Nobody cared except I was going crazy. Um, just changed my worldview forever. And I don't even know how I started on this rant, so I don't know how to wind it up.
Oh, let me tell you,
But
can we just share that your movement and this energy created a nonprofit called
the Love is Greater Than Hate project.
Yes. Yes, that's what that energy did. Will you share a little bit about the mission? There's two missions which I love.
I, I'd love to. We refined it last year. It's ending interpersonal violence, promoting forgiveness, and presencing love. And, a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, what does forgiveness have to do with? I've done conferences where professionals get mad when I talk about forgiveness because they haven't experienced the power of it like me. I didn't. I had no idea what forgiveness was until it happened to me in a life changing way. I think we don't understand forgiveness, and we especially have no idea how good it is for us, how amazing it is for us. The Mayo Clinic does, though. This isn't Buck or the Love is Greater Than Hate project. This is the Mayo Clinic
The Mayo
saying
Clinic, let's bring in your
that,
science. Here we go.
yeah, here we go. For those who want science and systematic approaches and data, which is all important to guard against our crazy minds, the Mayo Clinic says that forgiveness, um, okay, first they say it means many different things to different people, but in general, it involves an intentional decision to let go of anger and resentments. So my forgiveness really doesn't have a lot to do with Dan. It has to do with me releasing from inside my body tissues and my brain and my heart anger, resentment, hostility, bitterness, cynicism, skepticism, darkness, things that wreck my life. And it's not, the guys in prison, the first 4 classes of our 10-week, 10 lessons are a deep dive into our anger because that's essential because it lives in us and we don't know it for the most part. And guys, especially, we're built from the time we're this big, we hear, don't be a baby, quit crying, don't be a girl, walk up, stuff like that, and get over it, just get it done, whatever. And we get our feelings kind of pounded out of us. Like we learn to just deny our feelings and move on, but that doesn't get it done. That's not where healing comes from.
I'm picturing a person or a dad, let's say, who this happened to their daughter. And they've lived in the same experience you just said, where they didn't get to express any emotions except maybe anger or fierceness. And their first inclination is, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Do you think part of the program, what you're doing, is it's allowing them to access, let's say you did kill him. What part of you can own and hold the space that you took a life, even though that person caused extreme pain to the person you loved? It's it's I almost feel like you're an alchemist where it's like you if you can get them to feel their own pain, they can then hold the pain of what happened to their child so that they don't
Yes.
explode violence over. Like I feel this
Yes.
alchemy in your work and what I'm hearing. Is that
Yeah.
is that a fair assessment? Let them start feeling so that you don't want to kill another human, even if they did a horrible
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. It's one of the main reasons I do what I do when I do presentations all over the place, not just in prisons. I need to resensitize us to the real life costs of violence. And we start with their anger, and we start with my story and Jessie's story because it's easier, because they have so much, and all of us have accumulation of anger. Anyway, we dive deep into it, and they release it, and it turns out, according to the Mayo Clinic, I never finished that thought and that data. Mayo Clinic says that here's the list of things why you might want to think about forgiveness, of why forgiveness is good for you, our listener. Number one, lowers your blood pressure. Number two, it strengthens your immune function. Number three, improved mental health. Let's back up a second. Number one killer in the world today, heart disease and heart vessel disease. Number 1A, cancer. Number one first indicator and risk factor in heart vessel disease, high blood pressure. This is one of the bastions of medical research and science and data on the planet, telling us if you have high blood pressure, you might want to consider, they didn't say go use this med, they said try forgiveness. Which, by the way, in last year's class at the Salvation Army, the adult rehab center, we get all the way around the circle, lesson 10, we're sharing what we got out of this. And Frank says, well, I went to my doctor last week. He took me off my blood pressure meds. And moral of the story, make it a short story. It's one thing to have, to hear that the Mayo Clinic says that forgiveness reduces your blood pressure. It's another thing to go to your doctor and have them take you off your meds because you started a forgiveness class 3 months ago and now you're 3 months into it and your blood pressure is so low because you're on blood pressure meds that you
Oh
don't
my
need anymore.
gosh,
He's got to
that's
take them
amazing.
away.
Yes, it's a psychophysiological. You're working with the mind and the body connection. Yes.
And our immune function is strengthened by forgiveness. Well, number one, the system of the body that fights cancer daily is our immune system. Mental health, depression, anxiety, top two mental illnesses in the world today, depression and anxiety, decreased by forgiveness. Relationships improved. Anybody out there listening have perfect relationships across the board? Might want to try forgiveness. These are all things, these are physical and mental, emotional, social, and spiritual benefits of the forgiveness process, according to the Mayo Clinic. So
According to the
just for
Mayo
selfish
Clinic and
reasons.
Buck. Yes. Oh, I love it. Are you cool if I jump back into a couple questions with
Absolutely.
Carrie? Okay. So Carrie said, losing a child leaves a very specific and incompatible grief in its wake. For me, there are days when I am doing just fine, my normal life tasks, and out of nowhere, I feel that pain creep up, that deep, deep ache. What do you, or do you still have those moments? And if so, how do you process those?
First of all, Carrie, I feel you and sorry. And you're so wise. And yes, CG, who I talked about earlier, who said, no, it never goes away, also said it comes in waves. And we heard that from several people back in the beginning, and they were absolutely right about that. It does. And for no reason. Like you'll walk into the kitchen and smell something, and boom, that'll be the reminder of Jessie, the meal we had together in which she said such and such when she was 6, or, um, there's endless reminders, endless triggers, and it does come in waves. Um, however, this is maybe I'm just here's my cocky arrogance coming out. I feel a little bulletproof, honestly. I feel like purpose bulletproofs me to the chronic sadness, depression, darkness. By chronic, that means I'm being a chiropractor now. That means ongoing.
Ooh,
And I don't really think
let me add this real quick because I think this will help
you know.
tailor it. She's only, I believe, 2 years or a year and a half into the death of her
Mm,
child. So you have
mm.
12 years. You've got notches on your belt. If you took us back to 2 years in, and I ask you that question, is that yeah, do you still have those moments and how do you process this?
Yes,
Were
yes.
you bulletproof at 2 years?
No,
That's what I thought.
much more
Yeah.
so now than then. Now I think it's just because I literally talk about Jessie in one way, shape, or form every single day for 12 years. And it's incredibly healing. And I don't do it for that. I do it because I feel called and I'm trying to make a difference. But the side effect, every drug has a side effect. And this is my drug. It's got the best side effect ever. It's just super healing and fulfilling, gives me purpose. Back then, um, there was an acute stage before the chronic stage. The acute pain in the first days was just off the charts intense. I've had a broken bone. I've had a broken heart. I've had broken relationships. I've had broken dreams. And all of us listening have had some or all of those. Never had a pain that was anywhere close in the intensity and the lifespan of this one. Just incredibly intense. And it will always, I'm convinced that the pain will be with me until the day I leave this body. But there's something else that lives along with pain now that's even deeper and obvious and way better. And that is this unexplainable peace and purpose and love.
You give hope to so many people who've lost their child, whether it to cancer, whether it to violence. You give hope, which is so needed in this world. I'm actually imagining you and Carrie speaking together. I have someone who will be on our podcast from Switzerland. She lost her daughter in her 40s to cancer, and she had something really powerful and beautiful to say. And she had said, I don't wish the pain away because that pain is my reminder that she lived so that the pain and the love can stand by side. And I hear all of you saying the same thing, different words. So profound. She also shared in Carson's passing, I learned that joy and grief can exist at the same time in many moments. So her question to you is that something you've discovered too? And if so, how does that play a role in how you do life?
Yes, I have. What a brilliant insight.
No,
And I,
right?
I got to get better at communicating this with other people
Mm.
because I do
Mhm.
want to give hope. And maybe the
You
first way I
do.
can give hope is to let everybody know that I'm serious about this. I'm not trying to be falsely humble. This is just
Mhm.
true. I'm a jackass. And if you knew me, if you knew me like Joy knows me, you would
Yeah.
know that if
She-
I can do this, anybody can do this. I'm not kidding. I don't have a superpower. I mean, maybe I
Mm.
do. Maybe it's chiropractic, but it's not this.
It could be yes
Forgiveness
and.
is a
You
superpower,
could
but
You could
and
be a
everybody can
jackass
have it.
and amazing. You can do both.
Yes.
People are complicated.
In 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 this, yes, we are. We're very complicated. In the same way, I can have peace, joy, and grief. Is that what
That's
you
right.
said?
That's
Joy and
right.
grief at the same
Joy and
time?
grief. That's right.
Yeah.
How does that
I
play in
would.
your life?
Yeah, I would go one step further to say that they're married. Like you can't fully have one without the other, is my experience. Like it was kind of like, let's say I walk out of my house in the middle of a Wisconsin winter and I forget my keys and the door locks behind me. And I get really cold really fast. When I get back in there eventually, warmth is going to live differently for me because of my freezing for a little while. Same exact thing with grief and joy. Um, if God is real, if we had a creator, one of the people one of the things people most struggle with, I think, is how could a loving God who everybody tells me is pure and perfect love allow, I mean, and all powerful and has
Yes.
a plan and can
Yes.
control anything.
That's
How
right.
could they let this world be like this? How could they
Yes.
let that happen to Jessie?
Yes.
How could a loving God let that happen? Why didn't they give us a heads up so I could go home that morning and be there, like that?
Right.
And
Right.
and I think what I understand now is that I can't have I, I never had I never knew the the depths and power of the peace I have now, the joy I have now. And how insane is that for a dad who lost the most precious thing he's ever going to have in this life and knows it's not coming back to talk about being more joyful than I've ever been? I can't have those without having gone through the fire. That's what the fire's for. That's what this world is for. There's a show called Forged in Fire, cable TV. Have you ever seen
Mhm.
it?
No, but it
They
sounds good.
stick in they stick this chunk of rough metal in the forge and they heat it, they pull it out, it's piping red hot, and they pound on it and they hammer on it. And these guys are skilled artisans and they turn this rough metal into something beautiful and useful, just this beautiful sharp blade. Well, that's how life is. That's how this world is. I think that, you know, don't let the fires of life harden us. Let them soften us so we too can be pounded on by life and molded and shaped into something more useful and beautiful. But you have to go in the forge to soften.
It's interesting, having worked with dying children for a decade, having worked with dying people for like 18 years in hospice, um, I've always found it to be such a beautiful space because that's where presence rises when death arrives. And I hear you through this whole conversation, presencing to each moment and how you presenced with peace and how extreme terror and horrible violence towards your daughter also brought you peace. And the part that feels unfair, I've talked about the unfairness to life in those in prison, those whose child has died. Um, there's some way, and not that any of this is okay, there's something about someone who dies of a disease that's slightly more palatable than knowing that a human could do this to another human, that could find pleasure in your loved one's pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also something about dying old when you've lived a long life versus dying young when you
Versus
haven't had a
dying
chance to
young.
yet.
Yes, and when someone dies young, there's there's a weight to that. There's a weight because they only had so many years on this planet. And I've met many children at the end of their life who had wisdom to share. One little girl, and I was picturing this little girl. She was 11. Her name was Holly. Her mom will probably watch this, and I hope she might come on. She wrote a book about her. Um, Holly always wanted the world to know that love was everywhere. That love was everywhere. And her mom called us days before she died to see if we could bring a pile of puppies to her. And what was so crazy was everything lined up. It doesn't usually happen the next day. We plan for these sometimes months in advance, weeks in advance. Everything lined up, just like everything is lined up with your nonprofit. Like, when your pain becomes a purpose that helps for global healing, the angels come. They all come. The earth angels come. The angels up there, all of them circle to make it happen. And when I heard about Jessie's story and your mission, that love is greater than hate, I thought about beautiful Holly, whose mission was love, to share the world. Love is everywhere. And we brought her the pile of puppies. We never push to have the videos or photos put out on social media. We always give it to them and ask if they want it, great. If not, her mom said, yes, I want people to see that joy can reside with pain. I want this to be seen. And her child had a very hard death. Her body was enveloped with tumors. She couldn't smile because the tumors were so much and to even breathe. So she had a really hard death. So this is why I thought of Jessie and I thought of Holly. And it was so powerful because once her mom said yes, we'd never had a video that literally many countries asked if they could show it. Her video went viral in the most non-egotistical way. It was her mission before she died, and she learned that the whole world got to see her, that love is everywhere. And I pictured Holly and Jessie up there, like these love angels who had a mission, and both parents. Her mama wrote a book because love is everywhere, and she shared her journey in her journey as a parent watching her child deeply suffer. And I thought of both of your children in this and how they can still move things even when they're no longer here on the earth in a physical form.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
true for Jesse's legacy.
Yeah.
Left to my devices, I mean, I did okay in life. I've built 3 chiropractic practices, but all of them are small. None of them, I've never broken the bank and knocked it out of the park. I don't really care to. That has never been the focus. I just want to help serve. But there's so many backstories. I'll just say that we've just filmed our 9th TV show, the first of which was Dateline NBC, and many tens of millions of people on 5 continents all over the planet now have at least seen Jesse's story and at least heard that there's a project started by a man to end interpersonal violence, 90% of which is against our girls and women, because of Jessie and because of her life and because of her death. That's just extraordinary. I've never done anything that had that kind of reach and impact before. It's just happened. So I believe I would have thought, if you would have said all the things you just said 13 years ago to me, that was kind of pie in the sky, wishful thinking, spiritualism kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like you're absolutely right. And there's forces at play here that I was asleep to for 53 years that are always working for our good. And of course, there's forces at play on the other side too. And I believe they got a hold of a young man who walked into my house on July 15th, 2013, with evil in his heart. But that doesn't mean I can't love and forgive. And it doesn't mean Jesse's story can't be seen by millions and be used
Yes.
for love and forgiveness.
Yes. Ooh, you just tied in something. Meenakshi, she had some questions for you. Her father and her grandfather were killed by terrorists when she was 16 years old, and that catalyzed her life. Death is a catalyst. So she knows of your story. So she sat down and wrote some questions for you. Is there anything you wish society better understood about families who go through what you went through?
I mean, who doesn't want to be seen and known? Everybody wants everyone else to understand our plights, and we're all in this together, but we're also all in this alone in ways. Nobody can really get us, I think. So yes, 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 yes. At the same time, um, being a person of faith now, I don't actually. Half of me wants desperately to be known and seen. The other half of me doesn't need that at all anymore. Um, it doesn't matter to me so much anymore. We do want to change culture. We do want there to be a shift. We do want humanity to elevate to a place it's never been able to get to yet. My brother used to be a technical rock climber, and he would lead expeditions in Alaska and Patagonia and climb cliffs, and he'd take me out. And I'm not a climber, but we'd go up 100-foot, 200-foot cliff, and there was always a crux move. And the crux move was the hardest move. You had to be able to make it to get up that cliff. If you couldn't make the crux move, you would try and try and try, and you'd turn around and go back down. And you couldn't get to the top of the cliff. You couldn't get to that place that you'd never been before and see what there was to see until you could make the crux move. I believe the crux move for humanity right now, to get to a place humanity's never been, to get somewhere we've never seen, a world without violence, without interpersonal violence. I believe the crux move is forgiveness. And I also believe it's not hard, it's simple. It's just a matter of intention and practice, and more people are starting to choose it. And I just want to speed up the process.
I also hear there's forgiveness and being seen, held, and heard in the forgiveness, because your journey, from what I can tell in the last 12 years, you have been seen, held, and heard by countless earth angels, I would say, from the courtroom with the powerhouse women to the kids who hold you to those you've met in prison. I just see this umbrella of being seen, held, and heard, and vice versa. You giving that back, the forgiveness and the seeing, held, and heard, which so many people aren't on a daily basis. And wow, so powerful. There's one other question that feels very tied into both you and Meenakshi's experience. How has this experience shaped your views on justice, safety, or support for victims' families?
Um, on safety, um, I have a new view that I never had before. And that is that, this is going to sound dark, that safety is an illusion.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
called Dan a monster. And I
Yeah.
kept saying, Dan's not a monster. He was a regular 19-year-old kid. He was never in any trouble with the law, with school, straight A student, popular with the boys, popular with the girls, on and on and on. And but people wanted, Joy had this amazing insight early on where she said, people say that they want him to be a monster. They need him to be a monster. They need to think that there's something different about him than the rest of us. And then if we can just get better at identifying the monsters, we'll be safe from them. Joy and I no longer believe we're safe from the monsters. If we would have done one thing that I won't mention that a few people said we should have done in retrospect, I don't believe that would have changed anything. I believe Dan would have found another way around that because he had an intention. So my views on safety have grown darker. I won't, I'm not, no shade on self-defense. I think
Yes.
that's a awesome service and useful and important, and it's probably saved plenty of lives. It's
Yes.
not my thing, just because my safety now comes from a spiritual place, in my opinion. I'm actually not very attached to this life and this world anymore, and I'm ready for the next because now I feel like I know there is one. Anyway, my views on justice.
Mhm.
There is none in this world.
Interesting.
And yet,
Yes. Tell me more.
I also believe this, my spiritualism. I don't mean to preach today. It's just me. It comes out. I can't help myself.
Yes.
Apologies. Um,
Yes.
there's ultimate justice. And I don't mean God punishing bad people. I mean the beauty, the peace, the love, the blessings, the joy, the growth that I've had from these bad things that have happened to me. There's a reward. There's this ultimate blessing from it all. There's no justice here. Like there's no closure. People say at least you have closure now. When the trial ended and Dan was found guilty,
Mm-mm.
well, who cares? Jesse's still dead and Dan still did it, and he's you know but it was important. Obviously it's important to have our legal justice happen. um so yeah, kind of dark answers in a way, I guess. I don't believe there's I think our safety and our justice comes from a higher place other than where we're looking for it from here. And what was the third piece of her
third piece
question?
was, how has this experience shaped your views on support for victims' families?
Oh my gosh. Well, for me personally, first of all, there's way too many. There's, I thought what happened to Jessie was 1 in 1 million, but it's 1 out of 3 for sexual assault. 1 out of 3 of our girls and women will experience some form of sexual assault in their lifetime. I mean, do you know 100 people? 50 of them are female. Somewhere between 15 and 20 will experience some kind of sexual assault, and it's life changing for them. It's the biggest violation of trust and faith in humanity and in life and maybe in God that they'll go through in this lifetime. So there's that. Bring me back. I'm
How has
sorry.
the experience shaped your views on the support for victims' families?
Oh, I love every county in Wisconsin and most in the US have a service agency that houses and feeds and connects victim survivors of violence and sexual assault with resources and tools and information, transportation sometimes, job retraining sometimes, whatnot. They're uh, for me as a Christian, they're Jesus in action. They're Mother Teresa in action. They're they're the best of us, helping those of us in the greatest need right now, meeting them in the middle of their trauma and being there for them when they get through it. They're understaffed. They're underfunded. I know math, reading, and science is important, but so is social emotional curricula that teach us about dating, violence, and healthy relationships and things like that. There's so much cumulative trauma in our world. I wonder what it would be like if it wasn't there, and if we did better at supporting not only our victim survivors, but also our offenders and our perpetrators.
Um, Something that hit me around when you were talking about security and the illusion of security or safety. I always have considered myself someone with a very in tuned gut sense on people. And I get the sense you probably felt that way as well. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
When I heard this story and I knew it was someone who'd been in your house and a friend, it literally made me go, oh shit. Like, if this were me, I might doubt my own ability to sense people out. Talk to me about that and how you've processed this and your intuitive side, because you strike me as someone who is, and you will always be.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a genderist, but I think I'm really intuitive for a guy. And I know Joy is a lot more intuitive than I am. And it's actually been a thing for her. She's wondered through the years. She's had all kinds of experiences where she's sensed things, and
Yeah.
and she had nothing on this, and she wonders why. She's wondered
Yes.
why why an angel or God or somebody, my intuition didn't give me a warning to get home a little earlier that day. And I still have a high trust in my ability to see people and sense people. Um, but I also know that some people are extremely talented and capable of pretending and hiding. And I believe I know that evil is highly intelligent and tricky. And Dan is my proof. I mean, he was welcome in our home. I let my daughter date him. We fed him. We had him over to play in Jessie's music room with her. We saw them perform together many times at school and hung out on intermissions with his parents for 10 minutes till the next act. And never did we have any inkling that something like this could happen.
What do you say to the parents who are beating themselves up because they had the same experience and they can't stop beating themselves up for not having an intuitive hit?
It's not your fault. you loved your kids, you were a great parent. It's all that's required. We're going to make all kinds of mistakes as parents, like the rest of life. But if you love your kids deeply, that's all that's required. Um, and I'm not even saying this to myself. I mean, who I'd really love to say this to is Dan's
Them.
parents.
Yeah, talk to
Yeah,
them.
I'd love, yeah, I'd love them to know that I know that he, in my opinion, I mean, we never know what happens behind closed doors, but
Mm.
I have no reason to think that they were anything but excellent parents. They seemed to provide him a great environment. They produced a great daughter who was a year or two ahead of him. Um, they gave him a lot. They gave him a great foundation for success in life. He was almost not a prodigy, but he was a very talented violinist. He was an athlete. He was, socially, he was popular at school with the boys and the girls. Um, he had a lot going for him. He's an excellent student, one of the few students, better student than Jessie at Hartford Union High School. Had a lot going for him. I would say to them that we don't blame you, that it's not your fault. It was Dan's choice. He's forgiven, but we don't, I don't forgive them because there's nothing that needs forgiveness. They didn't do this. He did.
And what do you say to the parents of people who have murdered and done horrible things to other humans? What do you say to them if they are beating themselves up?
That's another good question. I think my answer is similar to the earlier one about what do you say to somebody who's lost someone. I wouldn't know what to say. I would just want them to know that I'm not judging them, that I would sit down with them, spend time with them, support them. It's got to be its own special kind of hell to be the parent of somebody who's done something like this. And and I believe in accountability for myself and everybody. Um, Nobody's perfect. I've made a ton of small and big mistakes in my life, and I think there's a lot of value in evaluating and looking to see maybe because if you're a parent and some of your parenting did contribute to your child doing something like this and you're denying that and you're not confronting or facing or being honest and reflective and evaluative with yourself about that, honesty is a big piece of this whole um, healing, this whole being present with something and sitting with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Presence is power. You were proof of that. After she passed away, she was playing Fiddler on the Roof. What happened when you went to the play where she was no longer there to be the Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah. So they had opening weekend. She and they performed Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday matinee. They had the cast party. And then that next morning, Monday, she was killed. And the next weekend, they were ready to call off the show. Even though they had another fiddler, usually productions like that have multiple people for parts in case somebody gets sick or whatnot. And they debated about it and the cast came over to our house one of those days. I think it was Tuesday night, maybe after the Monday morning murder, and let us know that they debated hard about it and decided that Jessie would have wanted the show to go on. So they did, but instead of having their other fiddler up on the roof fiddling during those parts, they just had no fiddler. They just had a lit candle on the roof of the building where the fiddler played and silence during those parts. And they said it was because Jessie was irreplaceable. So why even try?
You know what I hear in that too? It's one of your superpowers. There is no music playing. It's the power of presence. She was not there. The light was on, and everyone was present. That is what I see both of your superpowers.
It's so true. I feel like in a way, she was more present than when she was physically there uh, because of the silence.
That's right. So, at the end of our interviews, the person before you gives a piece of wisdom, and then we pass it on. It's like a wisdom tree, so it's seeds. So, here's the piece of wisdom for you: to never lose hope, even when life feels unbearably dark or broken. He emphasized that everything truly does pass, and that as low as a person can sink, if life can also rise just as high again, often in ways you can't imagine from where you're standing. And then his parting wisdom was to hold on with curiosity for what comes next, because life is movement and there is always another chapter worth living. And we began talking about Jessie's ability to stay curious and your ability to be like water and be in the movement. Buck, is there anything you would like to pass on to the next guest who will be on Don't Waste Your Pain?
I think what we hit on earlier, that every second is a gift, a sacred, precious gift, which none of us are promised the next one. So who will we be in this one? And every person is sacred and holy and precious, even when they don't act like it and look like it. To us, they are. So who will we be when we're with them? Especially when they don't look like they're sacred and holy and precious. And finally, somehow connected with the first two, every darkness is an invitation to be filled with light. Every trauma is a blessing, and we just have to look for it and be open to it until it reveals itself or we find it.
Thank you, Buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means refusing to let the weight of grief pin you to the past so you can stay present with what remains. Jessie's fierce spirit lives on through her father's devotion and courage. Buck reminds us that pain doesn't have to harden us. It can deepen us, open us, free us. This is how love continues, not through denial, not through forgetting, but by refusing to waste your pain.